I was jolted back to task by the landing gear locking in place beneath me. I finished stuffing my sleeping bag away and turned to my now mostly deflated air mattress. Man, y'all, I love flying cargo. You can keep your seats with your inches of legroom. Dude, I was full on, laid out, flat on my back, buffet style, with hot and cold running Ambien for the duration. It's awesome. The gray hull of the C-17 Globemaster descended through the inky blackness of the North Carolina night to a deserted apron on the tarmac where customs officials were waiting. Even at 2 a.m. on a random weeknight, the folks from customs were chipper and professional. As dawn approached, I was herded to the Bluebird buses, almost never painted blue, oddly enough, where we each had our own seat. There never were more than 100 SF guys in any given location. No one spoke. Perhaps it was the dawn that held our tongues. Perhaps the grueling 27-hour flight we just finished. For me, it was looking out the windows at a landscape so familiar, yet eerily foreign as well. But at this point, home was where my ruck rested, for however long that would be. 31 states, 8 countries, 11 deployments, never home. Like anyone in the early aughts, I saw news footage of units coming home to parades or families rushing into formations for their loved ones, or a dock full of screaming family members waving at their heroes in dress whites. 11 homecomings. I never saw those. The wife and child at my house were always happy to see me return, but spending 9 months of every year away from home eroded the emotion I would see when others returned home. It's just that in the unit, it seemed those trifles of humanity were beneath us. A coping mechanism to put pride and toughness above those pesky feelings. This was my last deployment in homecoming. That trip to Afghanistan was violent. 2 of my guys didn't come home along with 2 of our dogs. I had 2 other guys wounded and another wounded dog. Busy trip for me, the medic. My heart was broken. I had childhood issues of abandonment arise, and my fear gave me a rage that always searched for justification. But I unconsciously kept all that stuffed away like I was doing with my sleeping bag. See, a machine gun opened up at a near ambush, tagging Chad and Bodie and killing Aaron. Jared was killed in a friendly fire incident while we raided a compound. 2 other pups were killed in a cave and tunnel. There was little I could do medically. The impotence I felt wouldn't surface for a year, but it would remain for a decade. But my guys, in their search for why our teammates died, decided it was my fault, and I became their scapegoat. Not the guys who actually shot the guys. Me. My betrayal was crushed by my logic, saying that I could no longer support my dudes if they didn't believe I could do the job. We could only charge a dug-in position and face the worst if we believed that we had the best behind us in support. Shame coursed through me as I realized that I couldn't be that what-if in the back of my teammates' minds. I was too out of touch with anything close to emotions to process it or ask for help, so I left the unit, tattered, alone, and bereft of future plans. My reputation toxic, I moved on to writing a desk and holding office hours at an ROTC program, in case students had questions about what their service would look like. I just sat in silence while no one came. Pissed off and depressed at not being in the fight anymore, I just paced the department. I couldn't sit still, I couldn't sleep, and I knew I was fucked. I drove through campus and noted as the students on their bicycles careened in and out of the roads and around cars, not heeding any lights or signage. Behind the wheel of my pickup, I was awash with memories of my Hilux truck being swarmed by motorcyclists in Kabul and Kandahar. I pictured what injuries the student cyclists might sustain if their carelessness put them under my tires. My heart raced. I sweat through my shirt. I am not there. I came back to reality, parked in one of the myriad Soviet-looking concrete structures, and walked across campus to my office. The pattern of my uniform could not have been more antithetical. Forest camo in a campus full of stark buildings. Being on post where everyone was in uniform made uniforms, well, uniform. But being in a California town, on a college campus in head-to-toe camo, I stuck out like a sore thumb. I angrily decided the entire campus was anti-military and I was better than all of them for it. Clearly, this was not home. I got to my office and began the majority of what was supposed to be a 3-year gig, doing nothing with all day to do it. All the time in the world to go over all of my deployments with a fine-tooth comb. It came as no surprise when I was diagnosed with PTSD 1 month later. Too much downtime. I was like a classic car. I needed regular running, otherwise I'd break down. And break down I did. Like my soul hurt and couldn't get any rest. So one day, I decided that I needed some vodka at 7 a.m. to help me get to a place where that bullet sounded a little bit better. But when I failed to show up for work, my XO came to my apartment looking for me. "Leave, sir. I can't do this with you here, and I don't want you to see this." "Oh no, you're getting a van and we're getting you help." And the mental health services in San Diego opened their waiting arms, such as the inevitable home for most special operators I know. And after 18 months in the military psychiatric facility, I was medically retired at my 20-year mark. It worked out well in the end. In that short stint of visiting 5 different programs, I underwent everything the military and VA had to offer, which ain't enough, to say it mildly. But I did crack, then flood, sobbing with soul-shaking emotion. All that was buried came to life like some zombie flick where they just pop up out of the woodwork. Much of it vented and processed, I was released and on my own. I spent so much time inpatient that when I retired, I went to school and became a counselor. My first gig was at a 6-month inpatient drug and alcohol program where we had about 100 dudes and 30 women on any given day. I worked there for almost 2 years and saw my same clients return for another go at sobriety. They always looked worse, and although only months had passed since I had last seen them, they would be much, much older. The program was for chronically homeless and chronic felons. They would graduate or leave my program and then often return to the crimes or homelessness they had previously known. I felt useless and impotent again. I spent my first career in an industry with a 0% failure tolerance, and my current industry had a tolerable 90% failure rate. My coworker would attempt to allay my frustrations, telling me that you don't fix anyone, ever. Our purpose was to hold space for people, right? To plant seeds in their mind and their souls, and ultimately delay death. And although noble and she was 100% correct, I just wasn't at a place mentally, emotionally, spiritually where I could do that. So this was not home. So next I became a corporate butterfly, like lazily meandering through jobs like they were flowers in a garden. E-commerce, pharma, biotech, business development, project management, operations. Nothing felt right. No office felt like my old team room, like home. In my former career, I was used to pushing myself physically and mentally beyond the limits to get my job done. The job of national security during times of war. Being in a cube farm of administrative crap, pushing folks beyond their limits for a P&L statement was unconscionable to me. I had to keep moving. Thus, 5 years later, a bead of sweat trickled into my ear canal. I wanted so badly to shake it out and grab a Q-tip, but at the time, I was holding a 6'4", 240-pound man in my lap as he sobbed like a baby. His decades of trauma welled up and spilled over in snot bubbles and chest-racking sobs, and I was there for it. All of it. That man trusted me enough to let it all go, finally. Although it wasn't anything about me or anything I said that made the transformation happen. It was the psychedelics. It was the safety to be vulnerable, the realization that he wasn't alone, and the love and acceptance he received from the rest of the group, and the 1,700 milligrams of Vicodin. See, a buddy called and asked if I wanted to be part of a Stanford study on psychedelics and PTSD a few years before. I had almost a decade of different therapies at that time, but I was still incredibly depressed and angry, so I jumped at the idea. And then the traffic of the highway blended with the ocean waves in my ears as I stood around 5 strangers, soon to be brothers. The firelight danced across our faces as we were given the first of our 4 pills. Here we go! It's a blur. There's the other pills, the eye mask, then off to the races. The next 19 hours were a mix of random pictures and weird black and white geometry. Ibogaine is an extremely powerful medicine that has some incredible healing abilities. That's not just me here. It's what the Stanford study results show. For me, it shifted my perspective on issues such that I could let them go finally. It shut down the horrible voices in my head that I couldn't control. It had reached into my soul and scooped out the rot and the bad. The medicine didn't erase what happened to me. The trauma didn't go anywhere. But the table enlarged enough so that I could have guests over again. My mind quiet, I relaxed. Like my soul finally relaxed. And I found my home within me. And that was the objective that I was hunting. Like Dorothy, I always had the ability to go home, just survive the old ordeal and click the fucking heels together. So I started working at those retreats a couple of times per month, and I love it, right? I feel confident and competent in my role. I'm amazed at how my resume lined up with my counseling skill set. The 5-day program gives mostly special operators the opportunity to get past those mental health issues that other therapies don't penetrate. A brother recently told me that he thought I was just some anti-corporate hippie that liked to get high in the desert. Then he went to the desert with me, and I helped him open his eyes. Now he thinks that desert trips should be an annual thing, just for maintenance. It took 17 years to heal with most of the guys from way back then. Though I missed out on a lot of their big milestones, marriage, kids, divorce, remarriage for some fucking reason. I was able to see some of their retirement ceremonies as their guest, no less. Time takes time, you know? We all needed to process the wars in our own ways. Stateside is a location. Home is the objective.